Hello friends, Mr. E here, and today let's talk one final time before, hopefully, Fatshark returns about Skitarii, because they have said that when they return from their summer break, their hotfixes and stuff are going to address some imbalances with Skitarii, namely with the blitzes. So we'll be talking about these blitzes today, because they are, kind of stinkers as compared to our lovely Skull Buddy, and we're also going to be diving into every other notion of this talent tree, giving my thoughts on what a very slight update or rework could look like. And let me just say that this class, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I imagine that any changes we're going to get for this class are going to be in the very immediate future. If they just make a few tweaks to this guy, he will be all set for a very, very long time. Like this class, even if you didn't change anything, he still sets the standard for what is the best talent tree and best diversified layout in the game, bar none, really. So that's what I have to say off the bat. But let's just go ahead and project and sort of suggest a few changes, just a few very slight changes that could be made, such that if they can make these, then they can go and work on every other class and bring them up to this standard that is set by the Skitarii. Especially now that they have a class designer team who can make something like this. It would be awesome to see that lavished upon the other classes. And what we'll start with here is I want to start with talking about the blue nodes in general and their positioning. There's only a few blue nodes in this entire tree that I have any problem with at all, that are just weird or they're just don't really seem to belong, or no one would ever choose those. The first of which is right here with target prioritization psalms. This is a do nothing node. It highlights specialists only, not elites, just specialists within 12.5 meters of you. It doesn't make any notification. It doesn't direct you that they are highlighted. It just highlights them. So if the trapper's behind you, they're highlighted silently behind you. I guess get fucked. This is also considered close range by the game, within 12.5 meters, which should tell you something. These targets are already probably too close to you for where you want to know. A lot of times they're going to be obscured by stuff. It'd be much better if this just highlighted stuff at an incredible distance and let you know where they were anywhere on the map, right? This should just simply be swapped with Salvation Doctrine here. This node right here, Salvation Doctrine, although it is not all that powerful, it gives you 20% damage resistance while reviving an ally and 20% revive speed. It at least does something. It offers it offers a tangible benefit to your class, and you could want this. This does give value. There is a very kind of similar node on the Zealot style tree that people do take called Providence. So putting this here does give you something of value, and that would enable you to path this way, which is a big problem that I have. Is right now, if you wanted to come this direction, because pushing an enemy giving increased cleave is kind of cool. If you wanted to come up this path instead and skip over, I mean, you wouldn't skip over auto repair doctrines, but yeah, you might want to take this sort of path and then go this way and just grab capacity reclamation loop. There's a lot of builds I have where I want this sort of setup, but target prioritization psalms is effectively taking no additional power, no additional utility for my build. So if this were swapped here, then I could at least get 20% revive speed and some damage resistance while doing it, which I would feel much better about. And this, since it's so optional, so flavor only, it's just adding flavor and the scarcest type of utility, this should just be up here. That's all I'll say about that. Okay, outside of that, in terms of nodes on the tree here, down here in this part of the tree, we just have some other very strange options. It's everything in these trees is really, really high power and very juicy, and potentially you could use it in a build. But down here we have target neutralization feedback and ablative motion routines. 25% damage resistance while sprinting or sliding. If you are sprinting, you could be sliding, and when you're sliding, you can't take range damage. It shoots over you. I'm not thinking about how many times I'm actually getting attacked while I'm sliding. Generally, it's not melee. It seems very uncommon. Weak spot kills granting stun suppression immunity for 4 seconds is very, very weak. I mean, this is an incredibly short buff, first of all, that only triggers on a weak spot kill. And we already have stun immunity thanks to galvanized coating, which just every build should be taking. So that just seems odd. The other really sucky thing about these, the reason no one would ever take them, is because why are you taking these points, right? It's to get to integrated refraction emitter or to get to faux render creed. And your choice is, when you are here, you could either go this way or this way. You could do this or you could do this. And so your choice is, do I want to take ablative motion routines, or do I want to take an extra 12.5% melee attack speed? Well, duh, you're going to take this one, right? Okay, your choice over here is, do I want to take weak spot kills, grant stun and suppression immunity for 4 seconds, or do I want to stack 15% damage when I melee attack on all damage? Well, yeah, I'm going to take the extra damage, right? And that's what leads us to here. So these are just like in the worst possible spot, in spots where no one would use them. At least on this side of the tree, when you have those little extra like flare outs, Voltaic Burst is like kind of something you might want to use sometimes. It stuns and shocks enemies. That's kind of cool. And then Ablative Wards is definitely useful. That has like its own little niche use in Havoc and stuff. You have, you know, similar things on these little wings out here where it's like, it's not always the most useful or the, like, compared to what we have here. Superior Defense Engrams, Galvanic Marking Ray, these are core power abilities. Same thing with, like, yeah, weakness analysis, doctrine, system shock, right? These sort of abilities are very core. That's why they're closer to the center line here. These ones out here are supposed to be like more flavor style stuff, but these ones at least add some flavor that's actually usable and tangible. These are like almost nothing. So that's kind of odd. I don't exactly know what's going on down there. I'd like to see those kind of change to something else, but not really here today to get too into the weeds on that. Let's move on to talk about the red nodes here and just generally the abilities. All these nodes here are cool. I think it would behoove players a lot for the Skitarii to explain exactly what is going on with capacitance to them, to have a some sort of representation when you're in your menu to talk about what your capacitance generation is per second at a baseline, because that sort of stats is completely obfuscated to players. Like most players, I would say 90% plus of players do not know that by baseline, you generate 2% of your capacitance per second. And so that if you take this, you're going to 3%, you're like getting 150%. They also, you know, so they have no way of evaluating like how valuable this really is. And this would give you an idea of like how fast you can generate your abilities in reality. The other things I'll say about the abilities here is that for Cord Claw has this weird thing going on where it's got like these mutually exclusive things. You can't use Axial Slash and Probing Strikes. Seems silly because everyone's just going to choose Axial Slash. This is very much a better option, very useful, very utility focused. It can slash a lot of stuff around you, and you still retain the ability to face rip with this. So this is the default, like, obvious choice for everybody. Probing Strikes does not seem to offer nearly enough damage. The extra bleed is like completely superfluous. And the fact that you can't choose both is kind of like strange, because there's definitely ways you could like put an extra button press option on here to make you be able to do both. Then we also have Slice and Dice. Another option, you know, this does cost a talent node, right? And you have to use the ability over and over repeatedly. None of the things here should be mutually exclusive because they all cost a talent point to use. And what's the problem with using Slice and Dice and Satiated Steel, right? Because with Slice and Dice, you have to continue using them every 5 seconds, right? And this will give you that capacitance back over 5 seconds, but if you use it early, you lose part of the buff. So yes, this would help you to retain some, but you're still dumping all of them back to back to get Slice and Dice. I don't think it, you know, you're spending a node, right? You're spending a talent point node, and having this be mutually exclusive with this is crazy. I don't know why you'd ever not take Satiated Steel for that extra capacitance regen. It's just so much better. Up here with our Voltaic Emitter, if they could make this just a little bit more consistent, this is something I was talking about with Reginald, which is that I just don't understand why you wouldn't just make this go through walls. Because if an enemy is behind a wall, they already can't shoot you. So jamming their weapon is not offering any crazy benefit. It doesn't make them take this crazy insane amount of damage. It stuns them for like a millisecond, right? And I think the stun already applies to walls, but the weapon shutting off thing doesn't. So just have this, like, the simplest thing to do possible would be to simplify this whole like ability by just making it go through all terrain so that you don't have small obstacles getting in the way. Because the thing that really annoys me is when enemies are crouched behind railings and small boxes where I can clearly see like over half of their body, and this does not disable them, which is what a lot of gunners in the games are programmed to do, is get behind that sort of obstacle and shoot at you. And that's really frustrating because this ability wants you to be out in the open to trigger it so you can hit as many targets as possible. But then if targets decide not to get stunned by it or not to get disarmed by it, then you just get absolutely destroyed. So I think that just making this go through all terrain, I don't really see a problem there, because if they're actually behind terrain, if they're completely obscured and you can't see them and they can't see you, they already couldn't shoot you. So it's like having the weapon disabled doesn't do anything at all. And it's not like people are using this would use this to rush the map or anything. A bubble blocks everything. You know, this is just, it's kind of like an offensive bubble. It shuts down everything in range, but a bubble does the same thing, right? It makes it so that enemies that can see you, they can't shoot in at all. Plus it has a host of other effects. So I would love to see that change be made, just so this was just straight across the board consistent. And that's probably the only change I would make with it, honestly. Other than maybe I would make Voltaic overcharge, like recharge over time instead of instantly, because it's kind of weird, like that instant buff like that, but whatever. You know, just having this be consistent would be a massive improvement. Down here with advanced combat doctrines, this is something I didn't think about until Reginald mentioned it to me, but this is actually a really hard ability to use and actually hit targets with. The auto aim ability really requires you to be like locked on, and Darktide is a fast-paced game. So think about another fast-paced game, Overwatch, and how Soldier 76's ultimate operates there. It's pretty crazy in terms of the amount of aim steer that provides to actually make you hit your targets all the time. However, you know, with a game as fast-paced as Darktide, you kind of do need to have quite a bit of aim grab, especially with how fast some of these enemies can move. They have fixed the issues with the thing not leading properly when the enemies were moving and were strafing, or when you were suppressed, so that's good. But I find myself, I am actually missing a good number of shots with this, because I'm not aimed quite close enough. It expects you to be aimed within 5 degrees of where the enemy's hitboxes that you want to hit, and that's too high of an expectation of, I would say, most players, because that limits you basically to being at like long range, where the enemy's radial distances are like all kind of cramped together a little bit better. You can do better at that range, but if the enemy is kind of close to you, you can end up missing a lot of shots with this, which doesn't really feel fair. It feels like you should be hitting shots. And this, plus the fact that a lot of weapon blessings and stuff that you would expect to use with this talent, where consecutive headshots build this bonus and missing a shot resets the whole bonus, you really don't want to miss any shots, right? So it should be kind of a surefire thing that you land the shot no matter what. Yeah, I think that like making this more forgiving in general, just increasing the radius like massively for, you know, body shots should just be like everything where you're aimed anywhere near the bottom half of an enemy. Like, I just don't understand how, if there is an enemy on screen roughly close to my reticle and I'm pulling the trigger, why would the ability assume that I meant to shoot the floor, right? Or that I meant to shoot the ceiling? There has to be a way to check, or not even check for that, but like, you know, just assume that if there's an enemy anywhere near my reticle on my screen, that's who I meant to shoot, not the fucking floor or the ceiling, and just go by that assumption. That's the Soldier 76 thing that they're assuming is like, okay, well, the enemy closest to the center of the screen who's going to get targeted, because that's what the player wants to do. Just make it operate like that. And I get that the reason they have it so finicky is because they need to separate between like head and body, but they could very easily have there be a toggle in the activated ability where if you just like right click one time or tap or whatever, or it could just be a default setting for the ability where you can toggle between head and body shots. Because most people, I would say 95% of the time, you want to go for the headshot. It's only when you see a mauler coming up that you want to go for the body shot, right? So just leave that as a toggle, and then you could make the hitbox as large as you fucking wanted to, and guarantee headshots if you're aiming anywhere near the target. Would be so much more useful. Because yeah, I find that even myself, who's, I'd say, you know, decent at aim, I'm missing shots with this, which shouldn't be the case. Also, of course, this ability is still broken, drains all of your charges, like, you know, out of nowhere. You'll literally just slurp all your charges from 1 charge all the way down to, or from 4 charges all the way down to 1, or from 3 all the way down to 0. Feels bad, so hopefully they fix that. But outside of that, I don't have too many problems here. The only problems I really have with Advanced Combat Doctrines is that everything that it offers makes the arc rifle like even better. And the arc rifle is already the best weapon in the class, maybe one of the best weapons, definitely one of the best weapons in the game. I would love there to be benefits in here that could really give some juice to the lesser stuff. You know, giving more crit and more damage and more attack speed to slow attacking weapons that do very well with crits, like the arc rifle, is just sending them to the fucking moon. Meanwhile, you know, your braced autogun doesn't get really anything he can use out of this. He falls behind the infantry autogun, in that same regard, because that weapon does much better with crits. And yeah, it would be kind of cool also if there was some I don't know, ammo compensation thing here. I'm not too much, right? Because ammo, like being able to spray the entire map down and kill everything would be kind of stupid. But yeah, the ammo efficiency becomes a big issue for a lot of these weapons in the game, where if you wanted to do fan the hammer overall with this, that'd be cool, but you have, you know, roughly 1/3 as much ammo to do that with as you would if you were playing arc rifle, or, you know, I'd say like what, you have 75% as much ammo as you would if you were playing with the phosphor pistol, which doesn't feel very fair. So I'd love to see some sort of way to compensate players, or just buff those lower weapons, which is an idea I'll be expounding on in a video in a short amount of time. Okay, moving past abilities to, let's say, keystones next. I honestly don't have any problems with keystones, excepting like redline seems all good to me. Very nice. I love the extra ability charges. That's very cool. Cleansing protocols, all good on the western front, down, or the southern front, I guess I should say, down here. No problems in my book for this. My only one I have an issue with is power overload. Critical power overload here. I would think that this, considering it requires you to be at melee range to get this triggering effect, should at least apply the minor electrocution to enemies where they are paralyzed for a half a second. You know, this is going to trigger one time roughly every 20 seconds at the highest levels of play. That small paralysis, that stunning effect, would be very useful, and it would encourage you to be in melee range. Invigorating overload here, this should be changed to over time rather than being instant, because this is just like, you know, not anything that, this is going to trigger one time when anyone might use it. Having a constant 1% toughness per second being offered by this would be akin to a similar feeling talent on Arbides with when the dog kills someone who's pounced. You get some toughness over time. It's not very much, but it's nice to have that a little bit of extra regen. And it wouldn't be great, but it'd be something. As it stands, it's pretty much useless. Then down here we have static capacitor drain. This is the one that I really would like to see a couple of changes to. First of all, because this one requires you to overload 24 times to get that 25% capacitance generation, it has since become knowledge to me that capacitance generation only applies to your base class capacitance regeneration. Another great reason, by the way, why this like regeneration information, like the capacitance information, should be shared obviously with players so they don't get confused about this stuff like I obviously was. This should be applicable to all capacitance regeneration, and perhaps it could be a lower number, because this does require you to play, and this is assuming at a Havoc 40 level, this requires you to play for about 8 minutes and be party to all these kills and be close enough in coherency to all the elite kills that are going on in those 8 minutes to get this at 24 stacks. And that means that on a typical game, you know, for normal players who aren't playing Havoc, this is probably taking closer to 12 or even 15 minutes, which is more than half, or close to about half the game, right? And then you're only getting 25% capacitance generation to just your base regeneration, so 0.5% per second, compared to this one, which gives you 1% per second. That doesn't feel like a capstone, you know, 24 stack reward to me, and it wouldn't obviously at that point catch up to how much capacitance either higher purpose or the extra capacitance generation from Redline over here could provide, because these start, you know, immediately. You can get this benefit the second the game starts. This is pretty much always at 25%, generating the entire game long. This one's 5% anytime you kill an elite or specialist the entire game long. This one takes at least 8 minutes to get wound up. I think that compensating it for having it be a bigger buff, or maybe it could just be a bigger base capacitance buff, you know, maybe 50% or something, you know, so basically an extra 1% each second. That would help you catch up. And it also sort of works with the fact that this is lost on death too. So if you do die, you're set back to square one. You lose that entirely. A lot of risk reward. And then another idea that that Reginald had here, which I'd liked a lot, which is that, you know, why does this stop? Why isn't there some sort of bonus that you can continue to accrue over time if you continue to stack 8 stacks, 8 stacks, 8 stacks? So this is like the ultimate snowballing potential. You wouldn't want it to be anything crazy, right? But if you think about this from the perspective of a similar talent we've had in the past, in Vermintide 2, we had Grail Knight Kruber, who had these things called quests, and when he completed quests, he got buffs that were kind of like this, 15% damage or elite kills or whatever. That stuff was all really cool. And then when he completed all of his quests, he would get rewarded with a strength potion after he was done with all his quests, which wasn't as good as the quest rewards were normally, but it was something, for continuing to succeed at accomplishing your goals over and over. So why not have this? So every time you overload 8 times past the cap, you will increase you and all allies' incoherency toughness by 10, right? So that, think about this, you'd accomplish this within 8 minutes of play in Havoc, and then at the you'd get 10 toughness, and that'd be reduced in Havoc, obviously. But in a normal game, say you'd accomplish that by like about a third of the way through the game, and then by the end of the game, you'd have picked up an additional 40 extra toughness or so, right? To everybody in coherency. Maybe you could reduce that number or tweak that number as you wish, but some sort of small buff like that encourages you to keep your static capacitor drain guy alive. He's buffing everyone's toughness passively who's near him. Just like a nice flat buff. And that's something that no other character can provide, by the way, right? No other character buffs everybody's base toughness values, which could be pretty cool. You definitely want to have one of these on your team, and you'd want them to get stacked up and stay stacked up. You definitely don't want them to die. So yeah, that would be what I would do over here for power overload. I think otherwise it's a pretty cool, and it's relatively balanced in terms of the damage it does and stuff. It just feels a little bit odd that this one forces you into melee and doesn't give you a whole lot of benefits for it, and I would love to see this stack up and give some sort of like quest reward for continuing to do it. Okay, let's move on to auras, which is where I think I have some issues. This, first of all, is one of the best auras in the game. Super cool in design, and I love that it uses a mechanic that has been more or less forgotten about, and it's very comfy to feel with. Faux render creed here is like cleave and rending, like wow, that really isn't much of anything. This is just not very creative. I don't really have any notes about the power level. It's like okay, I guess. But really not going to be anything that anyone would notice. The thing that I really want to push Fatshark, or that I would push for, is that I would like to have auras where I could tell the difference in my game when I have the effect and don't have the effect, right? So survivalist aura and the corruption removal aura on the zealot, and this aura here, right? There is a noticeable impact that is happening in my gameplay when this is active on my team as opposed to when it's not, as compared to 10% ammo reserve, where I guess I might notice that, but like 10% ammo reserve for certain weapons, like if you're playing with revolver or something, this is literally like 5 bullets or something. Like it's not even enough to get 1 out of a pack. It's just like, this could have been so much other stuff. It's kind of weird that like that slipped through, being as uninspired as it is for a class as cool and crazy as Skitarii could be. There's a ton of cool things that I think that could be applied by auras by this class, such as just hypothetically the ability to every 15 seconds an ally who is hit by a melee attack emits an arc. There you go, or something like that. Like, how cool would that be, right? Or that sort of aura, like a protective aura that kind of like emits to people nearby, like makes them like a Tesla tower, more or less. That would be super, super cool and very fitting with the Skitarii theme here. I'm not here to prescribe ideas today. I just want to kind of go over like, yeah, these don't inspire me. They are very bland, and you probably wouldn't even notice they're on your team. And then let's finally wrap it off by talking about our blitzes. I know I've talked about this before, but of course, the Artificer Service Skull is like way better than any of the other options. You are kicking yourself, like just absolutely just like, you're making your game way fucking harder by not choosing this, right? It's insane to not choose this at this point, because the base skull does almost no damage, has to be activated to do any burns or whatever. Just the base skull here alone gets a massive, it's like a 225% DPS upgrade, and then taking New Spheric this is an insane boost to its damage. Like this is like 8 times damage upgrade. This on its own does more damage than most veterans would be able to do in a game if you just like pump damage with it. Of course, it has that bug where it can be used when you're completely out of capacitance. That probably shouldn't be the case. And I don't have any problems with Medicaid Service Skull is all good. And honestly, I wouldn't have an issue with Purgator Service Skull either if it had its own charges. This is a very, very slow amount of fire dispersion. I think it'd be much better if it just dispersed its fire in half the time. If it just got those fire stacks on enemies and then let them do it. I get that it's supposed to, like, it has a big area and it's supposed to be a long-term denial, but it really doesn't do anything to most stuff. And on lower difficulties, it doesn't, like, everything's dead before that actually gets to do anything. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe just get its fire out there faster and return to you faster, and also just have your own charges, because it's silly that it has to share with Medicaid when these are supposed to be, you know, you're already spending a node. Why don't I get extra charges by taking one or the other? It's silly. And they could be on different control icons too. Like, they absolutely could be on different controls. Then we have to talk about our grenades over here. One of the worst parts about taking these grenades in general is you lose the Servo Skull passive. And the Servo Skull passive allows you to hack consoles, which on its own is just such an incredible utility to bring to the team, even if you have nothing else, right? That frees up, you know, the choke points for a lot of missions, the end events and the mid events for missions are completing objectives that require you to hack. And if you have to spare a character to hack, you can be stuck there all day if no one can get it done. Now the Skitarii can automatically do that for you because they have the Servo Skull. Immediate massive use, and it doesn't require any charges, doesn't require anything, just a tiny bit of time. So that is an immense utility that you are forfeiting by taking this, plus that passive damage that it can deal just by going out. So then you have to spend a first node to take this, which means you're not spending this node, so you're actually losing a fuck ton of damage comparatively, plus the ability to keep up burn stacks and this extra damage debuffs that the Artificer Service Skull applies. But yeah, the integrated refraction emitter here, its biggest problem is that it is a shield that expects you to be proactive on when to use it and then go out into the middle of the open and get shot. And that is just not how damage taking in Darktide works. Damage comes out of relatively nowhere, like you're not aware. Like when you take damage, right? If you're aware that enemies are lining up to shoot you and attack you, you have options to evade or obfuscate and block and get behind cover so they can't shoot you. When you do take damage, it's because you didn't realize the enemies were about to fire, that they have a line on you and they're about to take their shot, or they're going to hit you out of nowhere. They're going to surprise you. That's what makes the Arbites True Grit ability so good, is because it prevents you from the, oops, I did not see that crusher overhead that skated around a corner and dunked me for a bajillion damage. This doesn't prevent you from that, because you have to somehow have precognition that, like, that's going to happen, and then press the button to activate it, and then you only get 8 seconds where that's active. And then you only get that 8 seconds 3 times per grenade pack. This does nothing for your team, and the only other effects that it has is that it can shock enemies. It can do like electrocution to enemies within 5 meters, which is an incredibly, incredibly close range when it's over. And because this ability only protects against range damage, you're putting yourself at risk of melee damage when that happens. At the same time, you know, making this grow to 12 seconds is sensible, and having it shoot arcs based on your absorb attacks is also sensible. But this one, kinetic repulsion, is simply not. This is just True Grit, but it only activates when the shield is active, right? So you can get that immunity to you can get the health gating, but this of course would only work on non-range, because you can't take range damage while this is active. So like overheads and bursters and fall damage will all be reduced to 50 when you do this. Okay, but like a lot of times you don't see the overhead or the burster or whatever coming, and you don't have the time to do that, or like the foresight to press the button and stop the damage, and it still only reduces it to 50, and it's per instance, so you could just get hit immediately after and get blown up as well. So this is really, really poor, and it requires 2 nodes for it. That's like maybe the single weakest node in the entire game. Yeah, so this just needs to be reworked. I don't know if I prescribed an exact recipe for how it should be reworked when I was talking to Reginald, but what I sincerely think is that this should be a charge-based ability, not related to your use of grenades, and it should also have a capacitance cost. So you or like a cooldown and a capacitance cost. So like the charges are based on cooldown. They could set that cooldown to whatever they want based on how like often they think this is relevant. And then when you use it, it has a certain amount of time that it is base like default active for. And then after that time, the absorption, like absorbing damage, costs X amount of capacitance per damage you take. And that way on lower difficulties where like the amount of extra damage that's coming in from ranged and stuff is kind of low, it would actually provide a lot of defense. But on Havoc, where you don't necessarily want players to have like a crutch ability like this, it would get erased pretty quick. But you would at least guarantee, like I'd say, about 3 seconds of invulnerability to range attacks, so you could reposition or get yourself closer to enemies, and then it would be broken and turn off. So once every, say, 1 minute, you can get this protective field, which if you were just being peppered by like scattered gunfire and stuff, you know, if you're going out in the open and you're fighting a bunch of melee enemies and you know there's like a couple of shooters out there, that's a good time to activate it, right? Because you have to fight the melee enemies. You're not protected against them necessarily, but you'll also be electrocuting them when this goes off in the midpoint, and then the little shooters can shoot you and they're not going to break the shield, right? And then alternatively, if you have an area that's full of gunners that are just going to blow you up, you'd get a brief moment of time where it would absorb all those bullets, so you could make an advance on them, but it wouldn't last very long. So it wouldn't be used like just to like absolutely ignore everything in the game and wade forward into destruction. Pretty much exactly the same way the Psyker Bubble works, where it has 5 seconds where it's invulnerable, and then after that 5 seconds it has a health pool, and the health pool, you know, on higher difficulties gets depleted very quickly. But that 5 seconds is still valuable. So that's how I think it should be rebalanced, is make it have a cooldown. You can't use it more than once every minute or 2 minutes or whatever it is, and it should also have like a capacitance cost, where it drains down your capacitance if you want to keep it up past a certain point, which means, you know, if you have red line with it, you could make it last a very long time, but you're going to drain a fuck ton of capacitance to do it, right? And that could potentially build up more charge. And also this should be more impactful, like, you know, intentionally tanking attacks to get charged, to have it consume capacitance. That could be pretty cool if it retaliates with a worthwhile retaliation of arcs. But yeah, this just should not take grenades. There's no way this is valuable as a grenade, and that's okay. This can take grenades. The arc grenades can take grenades. They just need to be made more consistent. I think they were actually an okay grenade. They do prime for a lot of stuff. The really shitty thing about grenades in the game right now is you don't have any guarantee of getting any of them back, and if they don't do what you need them to do, if they don't have an immediate impact on the game when you throw them, you kind of regret throwing them, right? So if you shoot a rocket, you know, from the high scum, and you actually fuck up and everything that it was going to hit is dead, that rocket is a complete waste, right? And you feel terrible because you might not get any more back, and having one versus not having one could be a big deal. Same thing with arc grenades here. If you throw these at a group of enemies and for whatever reason the arcs decide to just zip off and go do their own fucking thing and not actually hit anything near where you threw it, you could kind of have fucked up. Like the one thing you needed to accomplish with that grenade could have just not happened by random chance. I think one thing Reginald suggested with this grenade was to make these have 360-degree arc radius, so that like currently the arcs kind of fork like lightning. They can't turn around and go back the direction they came from. If you just change that for this particular grenade, so they could just kind of hit everything in the radius, that'd be awesome. Another thing you could do here is, instead of having all these, like, you know, extraneous, very kind of meh power level. By the way, what the hell is this? It disables ranged enemies. It should just be killing all the enemies within 8 meters, to be honest with you. Like, you know, these lightning arcs, most of the enemies within that range are going to be dead already. So maybe there should just be one of these that's a modifier that puts down a static field that electrifies every enemy that walks into it and primes them for your other stuff, because you have a lot of electrification stuff up here. Something like that. But this could definitely use grenades. The grenade issue is part of a larger issue that I have with the balancing of the game and the way that like loot stuff works. I think that looting is probably a sort of a holdover from a past game state that we probably don't need anymore as a concept, especially since there's almost none of it in Havoc. I'd love to see that swapped out for more consistent ammo and grenade returns, and then you'd be able to actually like evaluate these more correctly. But yeah, there you go. That's what I have to say about that one. It would be a better grenade if it was more consistent, would not arc randomly and hit nothing that you needed it to hit, and then not too many issues outside of that. And also, by both of these, by the way, you should still have the default skull. The default do nothing skull that like can only hack, that just seems to be a base part of the Skitarii class. There's no reason to take that away from the boy because he chose an extra grenade. That feels like a kick in the fucking teeth on top of having to choose a worse grenade than the Artificer Service skull. So there you go. All right, well, that's everything I think about the Skitarii as it currently stands. Like I said at the beginning, oh, and of course, like weapons stuff, but I'm going to make a separate video about weapons. Most of the Skitarii's weapons are very good and fine. Arc rifle's too good, whatever. But the overwhelming thing I want to say about this class is that we are so close to like perfection here. This class is so damn good. Like these abilities are so good. They're so flavorful. The grenades with just a few tweaks could be so flavorful and so useful in different ways. I cannot wait, dude. If they actually make the change to integrated refraction emitter and make this so that it is capacitance based, that you can use it on a cooldown, having tank Skitarii who can like wait out into combat and negate range damage that's coming towards them for an amount of time and then retaliate with electric shocks and then get into the fray. That's a very, very cool way to play Skitarii. It would be very Vanguard themed. It just makes no sense that that's powerful enough to use a grenade on, and you might not have a grenade when you need it, which sucks. So yeah, that would be super cool. I would be so excited to see that. This class is so good, like so crazy, crazy good as compared to when I was looking at some other classes and talking about how I would tweak them up. I have almost nothing to say here. You notice I'm not like doing the second segment where I break down and go like, oh, you know, this specific node and this specific node need to be changed into this and this. Like, oh yeah, let's take out this entire keystone and change it to this entire keystone. None of that needs to happen because they are so close to like something absolutely like perfect here in terms of like Darktide. I legitimately could not have hoped for anything more with it, with a class like this. So yeah, that's what I have to say today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you'll like and subscribe, all that stuff. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I'll be talking about Zealot next time when I'm talking about reworks. I think he's definitely due for some love like that. And then we'll also be talking about weapons. Weapons I think they should bring to the game, as well as enemies, is in the week to come. All right, thanks for hanging, guys. See you soon. Mr. Be out of here. Bye-bye.